Okay, today it is day 3 of higher algebra review, and the first thing I want to teach you is how to tell where two lines intersect. 2x plus y equals 8, and x plus 3y equals 12. Would you please write those two down? That is two separate equations, which means if I graphed them, I'd have two separate lines. And any two lines, unless they happen to be parallel, will eventually touch. You get that? If you graph two lines, they're going to cross each other somewhere. Okay, wherever they cross, that spot where they cross is some one place. There's only one place. They can't touch in multiple places if they're straight lines, right? So there's only one place where some combo of numbers, like 2, 8 or whatever, works in both equations. Do you get that? That's what the solution will be. It'll be a number set like this, like 2, 8, x, y, that works in both. All right. And there is one, unless I happen to make these two parallel, there is a place where there's some combo of numbers that'll work in both equations. Remember that this has unlimited solutions. There's a ton of points, infinite in fact, on a line. Okay, so there's tons of answers for that, and there's tons of answers for that, but there's only one that works in both of them. You get this? All right, so now, how do we find that spot? Well, there's two ways. You can graph it, or you can do it algebraically. Graphing it, you need to solve them both for y, and then if you had a graphing calculator, you could type it in and hit enter, and then you'd see where they cross, and then you do a thing called second calculate the intersect. I'll teach you that later. Right now, we're not doing it by graphing. Okay, it takes like a whole day to learn. This is called substitution. Again, it's something you should already know how to do, but I get that you very well may have forgotten how to do it. So, of these two, do you get that the top one would be easy to solve for y? What would the bottom one be easy to solve for? X. And you could solve for either one, whichever you felt like. I'm going to choose the top one, and I'm going to solve it for y. Do you get that my new equation will be y equals 8 minus 2x? Or I could have said negative 2x plus 8. Do you get that? All right, all I did is solve the top equation. Now, once I've done that, it's something kind of cool happens. Wherever I see a y, I can put 8 minus 2x. Remember, they're equal. It's just like if you had a $10 bill and I had 10 $1 bills, they're equal. I could like take your 10 and put down the 10 ones, and you've got the exact same thing. It's called a substitution. All right? So substitution means you take out something and you put in something that's exactly equal, like 0.5 and 1/2. If I don't want a 0.5 in my equation, I could put in a half, right? I could substitute that. Well, wherever there's a y, I can put in 8 minus 2x. You have to do it in the other equation. Otherwise, this one will just solve down to like, it's kind of like Inception or something. It's like an equation within an equation, and all of a sudden everything gets all messed up. So you have to solve the top one and then put it in the bottom one. In the bottom one, do you see an 8 minus 2x? No. But do you see a y? And therefore, you can replace that y with, first of all, an empty parentheses. Make it big enough so there's room to put stuff in there. Do you get all I did is rewrite that with an empty parentheses where the y was? Now what do you think I'm going to drop in there? 8 minus 2x. And then you solve. Go ahead, solve that. You shouldn't need me to solve that. You can multiply the 3 times the 8 and 3 times the 2. Simplify. Get like terms together. Don't use the calculator yet, Noah. All right, this is the first time this year, and I won't even name the person, but I haven't had a chance to speak about cell phones yet. They are not supposed to be out at all. Even if you're going to say, I'm using it for a calculator, or I'm using it for the time, or whatever, don't have your your iPhones out. Your calculators actually is the lesser deal. I don't want them out right now either, but phones, don't have them out. Have them in your backpack. So the person that I know of that has it on their lap right now better subtly put it back in their backpack while I'm doing the next problem. Okay, so phones that are out I'll have to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it, but eventually I have to, So I wanted to give you that talk once for free. Next time I see a cell phone, it's mine. It's going on my desk. All right, this one I'm multiplying out. x plus 3 times 8, 24, 3 times the negative 2x, negative 6x equals 12. Now I'm putting together the negative 6x and that positive x. That makes negative 5x plus 24 equals 12. And then I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. And then I'll have negative 5x equals 12. And then x equals negative 12 fifths. Okay, yes, and that makes this positive 12 fifths. All right, good. How many of you were able to solve that one? Awesome. Now, do you notice that we don't have a y? All we have is an x. So we need a point. If we need a point where they cross, then I need an x and a y. And I got my x now, it's 12 fifths. And now the y of it, the y, you have to take this x and substitute it back into the equation. Now I picked a nasty one for you. You're in a higher level class here. This is honors. You should be able to handle this. I want to put a 12 fifths in for x. Now this one I can pick either equation. Do you get that this bottom equation's probably a little easier to put the 12 fifths in for the x because I won't have to multiply it by anything? All right, so I'm going to put a 12 fifths in right here. 12 over 5. All right, you want a tip for solving an equation that's got a fraction in it? 12 fifths plus, let me see here, 3y equals 12. Whenever you have a fraction in this class, and next year too, try to get rid of it. Make it so there isn't fractions anymore. What simple thing could I do to this that would make it so I didn't have a fraction anymore? Multiply by 5. So, now, this cancels this. I don't have a fraction anymore. And then I can solve it really easily from there. If you can't solve that, we need to move you back because you're in honors. You should be able to solve that. Subtract 12, divide by 15. You get that? It was not a super simple one because the numbers were ugly. You know, you came out with 12 fifths. A lot of times we're going to give you nicer numbers than that. All right. That's the first concept, and I want to do one more like that, except the numbers will be nicer. Y equals 2 minus 4x, and y equals negative 3 plus x. If you're going to do this with substitution, it's already solved for y. So easy. So you can pick to put this one in there, or if you'd rather, you can put this one, which is what y is equal to, into y right there. Either way, you can put the one into the other and solve it. Go ahead, do it. I'm going to recommend, if you don't know what to do the one I just suggested. Put that 2 minus 4x in for the lower y. All right, you should have said 2 minus 4x equals negative 3 plus x. Now you have x's on both sides. You get rid of the smaller one. It's kind of like the law of the jungle. You know, the bigger lion beats the smaller lion, that kind of thing. So you get rid of the smaller one here. Plus 4x plus 4. Oops, sorry. I should move it over there. Plus 4x. And why did I do it that way? Because if I got rid of this one, I'd have an extra negative in my problem. If you do it the way I suggested, always get rid of the smaller one, you're getting rid of a negative. That guy's gone now. 2 equals negative 3 plus 5x. You'll have one less negative in your problem to deal with. Now I'm adding 3 to both sides, and I have 5 equals 5x. And that means x equals what? Raise your hand if you had that one right. Awesome. And once you know x is 1, it's simple because you take that x equals 1 and put it back into either one of these equations. X equals 1 can go in like, let's say, right there. And then I can figure out that y has to equal -3 plus 1. So y would have to equal -2. And if my point is what I'm looking for, where is the point where these guys cross? What's the x we just figured out? 1. And what's the y we just figured out? -2. So the answer is 1 at 1, -2 is where these guys would cross. That is called substitution. And I think it's the best way. There's another way called elimination. But to be honest, as I've moved into the higher level math, I don't see elimination being used very much, but I see substitution used all the time. So let's focus on that one. All right, next thing is factoring. I'm going to give you a simple factoring problem, x, but I'm going to start by giving you a simple FOIL problem. FOIL that out, first outside, inside, last, multiply it out. This is a base thing that you need to know how to do. Would you please turn it my way and so I can see how many people know how to do this without any instruction? Oh, hold on just a second. Well, let me wait for people to finish. So I want to see. There'll be a fair number of people that really don't know how. And that will frighten me, but that's the way it is. Don't show me yet. I'm going to zoom in on it and show me in a minute. All I'm asking you to do is multiply it out. That's it. First outside, inside, last is usually the way people do it, but there's other ways. Okay. If you know how to do this, turn and show it to me now. So I can see how many people are not turning and showing it and therefore maybe don't know. All right, good. Almost everybody knows. And the answer, when you put those two middle terms together, is x squared plus 5x plus 6. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. That's first x squared. Outside and inside make 2x and 3x, 5x. Lasts 3 times 2, 6. Okay. That's really important because factoring is unfoiling. It's like they give you that and they say, what would that be as 2 parentheses? Factors, things that are being multiplied. Something times something. Parentheses got out of control there. Times something. See, that makes them factors. That's why we call it factoring. All right, so now, if I'm going to factor this puppy, I got to always start with x and x because my firsts have to give me this, right? So x and x make x squared. The outside and the inside have to add up to 5. And probably easier is these last 2 question marks here have to multiply to make 6. There's not too many things that multiply to make 6. It's probably 2 and 3. Or it could be 6 and 1. Right? So, if I put in a 6 and a 1, how do I know I'm wrong? Because when you do first, you get x squared. You do outside and inside, you get 7x, not 5x. See, that's how you know you did it wrong. Then you go back and say, okay, well, it wasn't 6 and 1. It must have been 2 and 3. And then you check and see if you're right by going first, x squared. Outside, inside, 3x and 2x makes 5x. Lasts, makes 6. That's your basic review of factoring. How many of you remember how to factor pretty well? Okay, good. Then, here's one that's a little harder. That is the kind you have to do on your homework today. And it goes like this. 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. You make 2 sets of parentheses. And you ask yourself, first of all, is there anything that can factor out of all 3 of them? And the answer is no. Nothing goes into all 3 of them. So we got to do this 2 parenthesis deal. And if I just do an x and an x, do you get that won't make 2x squared? Yeah. So I need a 2x and an x. That's all just logic. It only makes sense so far. Now, do you get that these last 2 numbers, here and here, have to multiply to make 3? They have to multiply to make this number. So, what do they have to be? There's only one choice. 1 and 3. Now, the trick is it 1 and 3 like this? Or is it 1 and 3 like that? And you won't know that until you play around with it and figure out, is this right or not? So I'm going to try it like this. How do I check myself? With FOIL. You do the first, that makes 2x squared. You do the lasts, that makes 3. So far I'm good. It's always the outside and the inside one that get people. Outside is 6x, inside is 1x. Hey, it makes 7x. That must be right then. All right, I did that one pretty much for you. I want you to try one like that. And it goes like this. 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. Factor it. 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, this one, 2x and x. Raise your hand if you started right. Okay, good. Who thinks they got it done? They figured it out. Well, that's most of you. Good. Next part is, what goes here and here that multiplies to 5? Well, it's got to be 5 and 1. And the only question is whether it's 5 and 1 or whether it's 1 and 5. And it's all pluses up there, so it's a pretty easy one. So now, first make 2x squared. Outside and inside make 7x. And the lasts make 5. And therefore, I know I'm right. 2x plus 5 and x plus 1. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. There's hope for you yet. I saw a lot of blank faces when we were first doing factoring there, so that made me nervous. All right, next one, really common thing. If we say 2x, no, I'm going to make it simpler. X plus 5 squared. Do you get why a lot of people think the answer is x squared plus 25? It is not the right answer, but do you get why they would think that? Okay, now, who knows what I should really do to square something and would get a different answer than that? What do you think? So how do I square x plus 5? Yes, that's what squaring means. You times it by itself. Do you get that that's going to have first, outside, inside, last, and have 4-part answer, not just a 2-part answer? That's a really common screw up. I bet a lot of you would have thought it was x squared plus 25. But you got to remember, it really means times itself. Would you please FOIL that out now? First, outside, inside, last, and get me the real answer, which is not x squared plus 25. It's got that in it, but it's also got something else. Okay, first, x squared. Outside and inside, 5x and 5x, 10x. The last, 25. It's kind of close to what people's gut instinct is, but it is not the same. You need that 10x in there, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Does that make sense? Don't fall into that trap. You're going to see that many, many times. They're going to give you this kind of a thing, and people are going to think, oh, x squared plus 25. Wrong. All right. Another important concept we need to cover, and I hope is super easy, is if I substitute numbers in, if I have 2x squared plus 3x plus y, and I say x equals -1 and y equals 2, all you have to do is drop those numbers in, but this is an important thing. I strongly recommend this. Whenever you're doing this kind of problem where you're dropping something in for x, you make an empty parenthesis, and you drop it in. Because a lot of people have trouble with getting, especially the negatives, they screw those up because they don't have a parenthesis when they drop it in. Now I'm going to drop in -1 here and here. And then for the y, again, don't just erase it and put a 2. I know it seems picky, but Telling you, empty parentheses are the way to go. You will keep yourself from making a mistake with the negatives. In pre-calc, I swear there's some kids that lose an entire full grade based on just negative mistakes. This is one way to save yourself that. Put a parenthesis in and drop it in. All right, now that forces me, do you get that forces me to do this first because I have a parenthesis there and it's got an exponent on it, so that has to be first. Negative 1 squared makes what? 1, and 1 times 2 is 2, so this is 2 plus negative 3 plus parentheses around a single number like this, as long as it's not being multiplied or whatever, is just 2. And then the final answer is 4 minus 3 makes 1. There we go. Okay, that's called evaluating an expression. Last thing I want to talk about is mean, median, mode. And I hope this is super simple for you. Say I list the numbers in order, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know which one of those is the mode? The mode is the one that happens the most. If you forgot this, take notes for yourself. Mode, most. That's the mode. 3 is the mode because it came up the most. The mean is another name for the average. So we'd add them all up and divide by 6 because there's 6 numbers there. Okay, so mean means average. Median is the middle one. The middle one of this, well, what's the middle one? That's actually what's between these two, to be in the truly middle. So what would you put? 3.5, very good. All right, and if this had been like a 3 and an 8, you'd average the 3 and the 8. That's what you're really doing there. Okay, so the median's the middle, and the last one is Q1 and Q4. If I divide this up into halves by finding the middle one, then the ones that are down here make the lower quartile. The ones that are up here are the upper, actually, it's upper half and lower half. Then what you do to find Q1 is you find the middle of the lower half. That's Q1. Q2 is pretty much the middle of the whole thing, the median. And I'm sorry, I said Q4 and I meant Q3. Q3, there's no such thing as Q4. Q3 would be that 5 right there. It's the middle of the upper half. All right, I've taught you everything you need to know for today's homework. There'll be a couple in there to stretch you a little bit, but that's all I need for the video for today.